In this video, we are going to look at a student portfolio. A student portfolio is an important tool that we use for our elementary students. Actually, we are trying to develop a number of skills that we want our students to have as they mature or as they grow up. So it is a really a very important tool that we need to think of as pre-service uh, elementary school teachers. So what is this portfolio? Now, so really the purpose of a portfolio is just to collect students' work. You can decide what you want the students' work to be about. Is it about effort? Is it something that has to do with effort? How much effort are they putting into the activities that you are giving them? What is the progress? Do they show any progress in terms of understanding, in terms of writing, in terms of some other skills that you want them to deal with? What about achievement? So if you give them something, are they doing it well? And do you want them to put that in your portfolio? So there are a number of things that you can put in your portfolio based on your objectives as a teacher. Now, really, a portfolio has a number of advantages. Some of them are that you can observe growth. So in this case, you can say, you know, I am giving you specific times I am going to collect information. So you can collect information maybe week one or week the first one, week 4, then maybe week 7 and week 12, and see what is the progress, what is the growth of that student based on what they are putting in the portfolio. You can ask them to write something week 4, and then you ask them write something, or you observe them writing something similar to what they wrote in week 4, and see what is the progress all the way up to week 12. And from there, you can say, I think my student has really intellectually grown from point A to point B within this period of time. So, based on what you are asking them to put in the portfolio. But also, you can use a portfolio for students to evaluate themselves. Call them, ask them, you know what, this was your job in week 4. This is your job in week 7. What do you think about yourself? Ask them to explain what they have written and why do they think it's good, or why do they think they need improvement. So that can be the work of a portfolio. You also looking at you want to be following um, their achievement as they go along. Like in the beginning of the semester, what is the objective of the portfolio activity or what is the objective of your class. So you want to so you will say the objective of my class is to make sure that my students can write well. So that is your goal, that is your objective. And then you say, what do I do? I need to be following them using this portfolio. How did they write in week 4? How did they write in week 12? Also, students' responsibilities, because um, it encourages that, because the students have to select some work, or maybe you ask them to select specific artifacts or work to put in the portfolio. So you are sharing uh, responsibility of learning with them. So that is a good thing about portfolio. Usually, as a teacher, as they undertake their portfolio, you try to monitor their progress and give them feedback, suggest some changes that they can make. So this is another advantage of a portfolio. Yeah, and because as a teacher, you are telling them, you know what, you are directing them to do something, and the students are doing that. And at some point, you are calling them to show you their portfolios, and you make suggestions. So really, it encourages that collaboration between the teachers and the students. So awareness of their abilities of specific populations. This depends on how much time you are giving to the portfolio as their teacher. So you can check what are the weaknesses, what are the strengths of maybe this population or this population, and how do I help that population. What about the like the higher achievers, lower achievers? How do I look? Let me look at their portfolio and see what they are doing, and then I can make a decision, or I can make a plan. How do I lift? Uh, how do I uplift the lower achievers so that have an advantage from my teaching? So that can be part of the advantages of a portfolio. In terms of disadvantages, I think the major disadvantages are that, I mean, it takes time, it's a lot of work, and sometimes it's really hard to determine how am I going to evaluate or grade this portfolio. So those are just some of the disadvantages that you can face if you are teaching using a portfolio, or if you are assessing something using a portfolio. So types of portfolios. So really, in general, especially for this course, we are just going to talk about 3 types of portfolios. The first one is working portfolio. Um, so this one just contains drafts that the students and teachers have. Um, and it will contain like the first draft, an improved draft. So for example, first draft, and improved draft, etc. So the students are still working and reflecting on their work. In this type of portfolio, you put as much as possible. So you put as much as possible, like almost everything that you need to put in there. Really, not much of uh, a selection. The second one is a showcase or display portfolio. So this one, you have specific material that you want to put in this portfolio. So sometimes what you do is you may have two portfolios. The first one is the working portfolio where you have all these drafts. Then you can say from my working portfolio, let me remove the best work and put it in a new portfolio. And I will call this portfolio showcase or display portfolio. So uh, this type of portfolio is really the pride of the student or the pride of the teacher, because the student is putting in only the best work that is needed, that the student wants to show, either show the teacher or show colleagues or show parents that this is my best work. So I'll get rid of this one. This progress portfolio is the same as working portfolio because it is just showing the progress where you are. So I'll just put it here, progress portfolio. Now, but the third type of portfolio is called assessment portfolio. So this one, as a teacher, there are specific things that you want to assess from your students. You want to assess maybe their writing ability. You want to assess maybe uh, their communication. You want to assess specific skills. So for that, you can use a specific type of portfolio that we call assessment portfolio. We are going to describe these portfolios better in the next slides. So what is this working portfolio or progress portfolio? So as we already said, this type of portfolio has work in progress or finished work. All the drafts that you are making, you can just put them in that portfolio. But later on, you may transfer some of the material to maybe more permanent portfolios. You can transfer some of the materials to the showcase portfolio or to the assessment portfolio. But this working portfolio is your starting point. And you are thinking about this portfolio. Who do you want to check this portfolio? So as a student, you want your students to be checking the portfolio. As a teacher, you can check what they are doing with their portfolio. Or even when parents come for conferencing, they can look at that portfolio. So in terms of the process, what is the process of making this type of portfolio? Um, a working portfolio, you have to select a specific content area that you want to address with your portfolio activity. And as I said earlier, you need to collect as much, or you need to add as many artifacts as possible into this portfolio, knowing that you may get some of these into other permanent portfolios. Right? And as a teacher, you may decide, how do I want to review this portfolio? Do I want to look at the whole portfolio, or do I want to look at specific pieces within this portfolio? For example, you are going to tell your students, in this portfolio, I want you to put science experiments, I want you to put notes, I want you to put diagrams. So you have so many things that you want your students to put in your portfolio. And then you may decide, this week, what am I grading? Or what am I reviewing? Maybe I will just review the experiments only. What about in 2 weeks' time? What am I going to review? I think that time I'll review the diagrams, how the students are dealing with the diagrams. Next, what am I going to review? I think I'm going to review how the students are able to describe what they have in their portfolio. So you may decide to review the portfolio as a whole, just general, how beautiful it is, how the students have arranged everything, all sorts of things. Or you may decide to review specific areas or specific artifacts or specific skills. So in general, you may decide, do I need to transfer this work to other portfolio, to the display portfolio or assessment portfolio, or I can just leave it like that. So that is the working progress portfolio. So the showcase really is just, as we said, students' best work. Normally, you want to display things like the highest achieving level of material. You want to put it in that display portfolio. So in case of the audience is really similar. The only difference is that this type of portfolio gives your students pride, because they have to select the best work. Right? So the parents, the older siblings, current or future teachers, actually, if this portfolio is done for a very long time, it can even be used for colleges, especially if you do it in high school. So you have your best work in there that you can show to to college departments and see how they react to that. In terms of the process of obtaining information here, the best way to have this showcase is to start with the working portfolio, where you have all these artifacts, and then you select the best artifacts from there. And you can also include things from outside your classroom. So you had a project somewhere, maybe during summer, you can put it in that type of portfolio, and you can ask your students to do that. What did you do in summer? Can you bring it so that we put it in your display portfolio? So that's the second type of portfolio. Now the third one, the assessment portfolio. So the purpose of this one is, you have specific goals, you have specific objectives that you want your students to learn. Right? I want my students to be able to review material. Right? I want my students to be able to review my material, or I want my students to be able to explain or describe. I want my students to be able to maybe interpret. So you have all these. Then you give your students activities that they need to put in their portfolio. But these activities must address the objectives that you have. And you as a teacher are going to assess those objectives. So here is it really depends on the content of the curriculum, what you want your students to learn. So if you want your students to learn about persuasion or narration, description, then put assessment in that portfolio that address these important areas. If it's about mathematical problems or problem solving, put something in that portfolio that deals with problem solving. And then as the students are reflecting on the portfolio, they'll be talking about how they have learned about problem solving. What new have they learned? What have they learned about persuasion? Also, as a teacher, you look at their materials and say, have they learned? To what extent have they learned explaining things? To what extent have they learned communicating information? So this type of portfolio is an assessment portfolio. But really, if you look at it properly, you will see that there's really a fine line between these three types of portfolios. You can use a showcase portfolio for assessment. You can use a progress portfolio or a working portfolio. You can use also it for assessment. So really, there is no huge difference among these three types of portfolios. It just depends on what is your emphasis as a teacher. So these are the three types of portfolios. Now, how do you create a portfolio? First, you need to have an idea. What type of portfolio am I going to have? Is it a working portfolio, a showcase, or an assessment portfolio? Now, this portfolio, what subject? Is it English? Is it biology, chemistry, physical science? Who is going to design? Is it the student? Is it the teacher? Or is it someone outside, or maybe an administrator? So those are the decisions that you are making as you are embarking on this portfolio activity. Now, what is the timeline? Is it one semester, or is it the whole semester? Even within that semester, what is the frequency? How often will my students work on the portfolio? So those are the decisions that you are making as a teacher. Who is going to store the portfolio? Are the students going to take their portfolios home? Do I have enough space to store this? So you are thinking about how many portfolios there will be, and where is the space that I can store them? How are we going to organize the portfolio? And who will choose the materials? Is it the student? Or as a teacher, you give them specific materials that they are going to put in their portfolio? Are you going to give them a leeway so that they can show their creativity and their understanding of the work by selecting at least part of the materials to be put in the portfolio on their own? So those are the steps that you are thinking about when creating a portfolio. So what do we put in the portfolio? At a minimum, right, a portfolio should have a cover. I mean, if you are doing it at if you are doing it at the elementary school level, you can get, I mean, a three uh, ring binder for the kids, or a book, a strong, like ruled book, something like that. But what is important is that a portfolio must have a table of content, so you can leave maybe three pages for table of contents, and each activity that you are putting in there, or I mean, you may have a title page for each activity that you are putting in there, or you need a title for each activity that you are putting there. So I'm gonna get rid of uh, the title page itself. Just make sure that you have page numbers in there if it's not too complicated. In some cases where you are using a notebook, so if you are using a notebook for your portfolio activities where the kids are just pasting things in there, page numbers are crucial. If you are using a three ring binder, try as much as possible to put page numbers in there. But if it's impossible, that's fine. But you need to have a specific organizing principle, which makes it easy for someone to find material in that portfolio. Then you have an overview. This one should be at the beginning, maybe just after the table of contents or before the table of contents. Just um, telling the audience what they are supposed to see in the portfolio itself. So you can say, all right, this portfolio is in three parts. The first part has this, the second part has this, the third part has this. So in this first part, you are going to look to see this, and this. In this second part, you are going to see this. So that is an overview of the portfolio, so that I can just look at the overview and I know exactly what is in that portfolio. Then you have conclusion or reflection. So we'll talk more about this conclusion and reflection as we move along. So in terms of designing the portfolio, who designs this? So as a teacher, you can design for your students. Sometimes it's the school wide, or other times it's the district that will just give you the design. These are the portfolios we want you to use this for with your students. The students themselves, just give them independence, give them an opportunity to figure out how to design their own portfolio. Sometimes the school administrators, so it may come from the principal. I want in this grade the students to have this portfolio. It needs to be done this way. So really, but most of the time, it's the teachers who are going to design the portfolio. As you go higher, you may involve the students. And the designing time, when do you design it? You can select a certain class period and say maybe we are going to design the portfolios that time, or outside school as a teacher you can say, I'm going to design this at home at night, or I'm going to design this during summer, so that by the time the students start school, everything is okay. We are just going to be putting things in this portfolio. If you are doing it with your students, you can do this during a block class. Normally, block classes, as you will see when you start teaching, um, you have specific times where you have more class time or a longer period than the other periods. So this is a good time because you have all this time that you can use to design your portfolio. Or you just have this book and say, you know what, we'll be adding things as we go along. So really, those are the things that you are thinking about as a teacher. And another important thing is creating time, creating time for the work. Also, are you going to have one period or 1 hour per day for your students to do portfolio activities, or per week, or even per month? So, how often the students do portfolio work depends on what your objectives are, depends on what you want to get out of the portfolio activity itself. So, those are the decision planning factors. So another thing which is also important is the grading. If you are dealing with a portfolio, what do you want to grade? Do you want to grade the whole portfolio? Or do you want to grade just parts of the portfolio? If you are grading parts, which specific parts are you going to grade? So this is the information that you need to know at the beginning. You don't want to be doing that on the way. You need to know it at the beginning. This is exactly what I'm going to grade from the portfolio activities. Is it a specific skill or specific skills that I want my students to learn? So in terms of assessment, evaluation, you can use rubrics. So really, rubrics is just about I can say maybe I want there are 10 artifacts, that is 4 points. There are 7 artifacts, so maybe if 4 points is 5, oh, that is 4. Maybe there are 3 artifacts, that is 1. So you can have a rubric indicating, and you need to have a plan for that rubric. In that case, you are just looking at, do I have everything in there that I need? Right? If my maximum is 10 artifacts, what about if someone has 6? What grade am I going to give that? What about if someone has 3? What grade am I going to give? If I want 4 parts in the um, or 4 divisions in the portfolio, what about if someone only has 3 divisions? What grade am I going to give? You can use rating scales like Likert or Likert scale. For example, if you want to grade communication and you see or writing ability, so you can say maybe writing ability 3 out of 5, 3 out of 5. Um, Descriptions maybe 4 out of 5. Explanations maybe 3 out of 5. So you can create a rating scale based on how your students are doing, or you can just have a checklist. I wanted an S there, it's there, check. I wanted a problem solving activity, it's there, check. So this is, you are just checking that the materials that you wanted are there in in the student's portfolio. And you can have conferencing. So you can set up a specific day where you are meeting your students, you are asking them questions about their portfolio, and they are telling you, they are explaining, they are doing all sorts of things, and then you can grade based on that. Or you can have an exhibition day. I mean, they post them on the walls or they exhibit them somewhere, and you students go and check them, and you as a teacher you also go and check those things, and then assign a grade based on that. So there are so many ways you can evaluate a portfolio. An important part of a portfolio is reflection. So this reflection is like a one-page activity or one-page writing that you want your students to write. In this one-page document, the students are going to summarize the artifacts and the experience itself. So really, this part is mostly the description. I mean, in simple terms, I can say, so in this portfolio, I have included, or just let me get rid of this and rewrite it. So I can say this portfolio is divided into 3 parts. Divided into 3 sections. So section 1 addresses, section 2 deals with, etc. And then you talk more about that, how you were able to collect information about that, was were you taught by the teacher, or did you select the materials on your own, right? So this is where you summarize your information, right? So most of the materials were suggested by the teacher. However, I so you talk about things that you decided on your own, you put it in there. That's the summary part. The second part is student reflection, what he or she has learned. So from this experience, I have learned how to, so you can talk about how to communicate, e.g., organize, communicate, interpret. So really just dealing with the objectives of the portfolio. The third part, what are the implications? Future learning. Right? Are you thinking about improving your portfolio? Are you thinking about adding something? Right? So you can say, you know what, in the future, maybe I'll add these types of artifacts. Right? Maybe I also want to learn how to synthesize things. How to synthesize. So that can be part of your future plan for a portfolio. Now, this portfolio reflection should be at the beginning. This should be at the beginning of your portfolio. It's because like when a teacher wants to see it, when a teacher wants to see the portfolio, it's better for them to start with the reflection. Right? It's better for them to start with the reflection and then go on and see what is in the portfolio. So a reflection is an important part of a portfolio. And when you do your portfolio assignment, this part I will check for this part. Thank you.